Good afternoon and welcome to SmartMusic Spotlight webinar on utilizing Flex titles in SmartMusic. My name is Michaela Graham, Senior Event Specialist for Make Music, and I'll be running everything in the background for our session today. Before we get started, I would like to give you a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have any questions for our presenters throughout the session, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. We will not be answering any questions from the chat box, but we will have time for Q&A at the end of today's presentation. So make sure you put any of those questions directly into the Q&A box. At the very end of the session, we will also share a link to the certificate of attendance for this webinar. Please note the certificate of attendance will only be available for live attendees and not for the replay. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the presenters for our session today. Composer, conductor, clinician, and educator Chris Bernotas earned a Bachelor of Music degree from William Patterson University and a Master's in the Art of Teaching from Marygrove College. As Director of Instrumental School Methods and Repertoire for Alfred Music, he draws upon his 28-year experience as an instrumental music teacher in New Jersey and brings an energetic and enthusiastic approach to the world of music education. Dr. Glenn Pohland began teaching at Loras College in 2009, serving as Associate Professor in the Communication and Fine Arts Division. Dr. Pohland conducts the Wind Ensemble, Jazz Ensemble, and Chamber groups. He also teaches courses in music education, orchestration, instrumental techniques, music in the movies, and instrumental conducting. We're so glad to have you both with us today, Glenn and Chris. I'm going to hand the presentation off to you, so let's get started.
Hey, here we are. Nice to see you guys.
How is everybody today? So glad that you joined us.
There you go. Great. I'm glad to see all of our technologies working. We're both live. We're all on. And it said that I'm energetic, so I guess I better be energetic for a Friday afternoon or whatever day it is that you're watching this. So thanks for joining. I'm glad to join you, Glenn, today and to see you here. And I'm going to give everybody a little bit of an overview of the Flex series. And that's going to start with the screen share. So what is the Alfred Flex series? This is I wanted to bring this graphic up so that you can kind of see what they all are overview. We have an Alfred Flex, we have Bellwind Flex, and that's both band and strings. And I'm going to highlight this a few minutes down the road here. We have the Highland Etling Flex and we have the Bellwind Flex, which are string specific. So I want to just kind of mention a little bit about each one of those so that you can kind of learn a little bit about where these came from and just a little bit more about the series. So first is why Flex? Flex is something that has been a need in the market for a really long time. As Michaela mentioned, I was a teacher for 28 years. I know that I don't look like it, but I was teaching for a very long time. And there were times that I had a really huge number of students in the band and strings too. And then there were times when I had less. Some of my 9th grade bands had 12 kids in there. And I would have loved to have had Flex material for those kids. What that means is music that works with whoever's in front of me and that they can just equally perform as the times that I had 120 kids in the same group. So that's the need. Why do we have it now? Well, obviously, the way that we're living and the way that we're teaching currently has kind of been a catalyst for more of this kind of material because there's a variety of situations that are happening, either hybrid or various ways that you're teaching. But I will tell you this, once this current life is past us and we are adapting to what comes after this current situation, we're still going to need this material. You're still going to have a variety of students in front of you. You might have a mixture of ability levels, a mixture of instrumentation, and you still want to give them appropriate music so that they can make music. That's why we have Flex. So when it came to us creating our Flex series, we had a little bit of an advantage of seeing what's out there and getting feedback. I can tell you this from my experience with anything that we produce in Alfred, anything that I've been a part of, the Sound Innovations books and pretty much anything. I usually get a bunch of teachers together from all over the country and ask questions. What is it that you're looking for in whatever it is? Same thing happened here. What is it that you're looking for in a Flex product? What do you want? And that voice from the teacher is extremely important. It always has been important and it always will be important. But this is what I got back from teachers that I asked. They want to have varied repertoire. They don't just want pop music. They don't just want standard literature. They want new, they want fast, they want slow, they want pop. They want varied grade levels. They don't just want that medium easy level, which is where a lot of these pieces sit. They want some very easy pieces in a flex format. And how about some challenging stuff with grade 3 and higher? Biggest thing that teachers were concerned with is, how the heck do I use these things? It's a little overwhelming. When you look, it's funny because you think about a flex piece of music, 4 or 5 parts, it sounds simple. And then you look at the score. The score can be very overwhelming. So they want to know, how do I use this? I'll explain more about that later. Opportunities for all parts. Boy, I got this from a lot of teachers. My poor kids only play the 3rd part. They never ever see the melody. If you're a tenor saxophone player and you're playing that 3rd part for all of your high school career, and I'm using flex products for that whole time, that poor kid's never going to see the melody. They wanted to have opportunities for all parts. And not only that, but they wanted to have all parts for all parts. Maybe that tenor saxophone player is the most proficient player in the band. So they wanted to be able to give that kid the opportunity. They want ranges that work. That has been an amazing challenge. And I say an amazing challenge because, you know, you can look at challenges one way or another, defeated by them, or you find solutions. And I'm a solution-oriented person. And I think we found some great solutions to the ranges that work. And I'll explain more about that in a little bit too. String parts, not just having string kids in that part of the program. These aren't band flex. They come from the band repertoire right now, and they're brought in. We have string parts. So yes, they are in flat keys for the most part, but we want to make sure that those kids have a lot of support. I'll give you more information on that too, but just so you know, there are string parts and they're specific, not just the C part for violin. Violin 1, part 1. And here are the bowings and here are the fingerings, and it's all that's specific to strings so that they have a better opportunity when mixed in an ensemble. Piano accompaniment is there to help fill in anything that you don't have coverage for. So there's piano accompaniment. And percussion tracks. If you go on alfred.com with the product pages that these pieces live on, there's a downloadable percussion track for students to play along with or to use with a virtual ensemble to help however you want. And it's also with a click and also without a click. How about copies? How many do we provide with these pieces? I don't know. Do we provide 5 of part 1 and 6 copies of part 2? No, we provide a couple of copies of each, and then you have permission to copy as you need them. That's really important. Obviously, that's not having to do with the SmartMusic part of this, but that does have to do with when you are in a live situation and you need 5 copies of flute 1, or not flute 1, of C part 1 and whatever else, you copy as you see fit. So that's how that's what the teacher feedback was, and that is the solutions that we delivered on. Oops, I went the wrong way. Here we go. So how do you use these things? The trickiest part of giving a solution to this part was, unless I'm in your band or orchestra room, I'm not really sure how you can use them. So I would hand it out differently to you and work with your students in a different way. But here's what teachers wanted. We do offer guidance, and I'm going to show you. I'm pretty excited about the kind of guidance of the how to use this as we want. But basically, you're going to use these as you see fit. The way that you can use these pieces is as a full band. You can use them as a string orchestra, any mixture of band and string, any mixture of woodwinds and percussion, brass and percussion, any 5-like instruments and percussion as a percussion ensemble, any kind of mixture. So this is really as flexible as you want. One of the first teachers I talked to about it was like, hey, Chris, can we have every part for every instrument? And I was like, that's crazy. And ultimately, that's what we pretty much wound up doing. I'm showing you this slide not to read every title, but to just show you visually how many pieces that we were able to get done. 21 pieces between Alfred and Bellwin at a variety of grade levels and at a variety of styles and at a variety of everything to try to give you what you really were looking for. The guidance. Here's how we're providing guidance. Beyond me sitting in with you in your band or orchestra room, we're providing some pretty specific information. One would be the editorial note for each of the grade levels. This is what helps you figure out how to use these in your group. For example, for a grade half to grade 1.5, the C parts, there's a high part and a low part on the score itself. When you get the parts, there's a specific part for each one of them. The B flat parts are probably the most challenging to fit the ranges in because, for example, tenor saxophones, when you're learning the first notes, they're in the upper register. Clarinets, trumpets, and others are usually in the lower register. To put a B flat part with both of them on would have octaves for pretty much the whole piece. What we did was we pulled out the tenor saxophones from the score, and now you have your B flat parts that are on the score, and then you actually have tenor saxophone parts to hand out to students. So when you see those, there's a specific tenor saxophone part. That way it's easy to read, and it's easier on the student to be able to process what they're looking at. Also, of course, we have considerations for the break. You can see there, you probably can't read this, but this is included with each piece very clearly. Part 1 may have notes that go above the break, but parts 2 through 4 all stay below the break. As the grade levels go up, there are different understandings of what's acceptable. For the grade 2 to 2.5 B flat parts, again, parts 1 and 2 may go above the break without options. And the parts 3 through 5 will stay below the break or have options, alternate parts. Grade 3 and above has different levels. So that's one way of providing guidance, showing you what's happening within those grade levels, and also making sure that that's super clear for you and students. This is a really exciting way of providing guidance also. Included with all of these is a teacher map. So you can see on the right-hand side, or my screen is up there, by the way, we have suggested instrumentation. That's like the menu of instruments that you can pick from. There's suggestions. If you want that part 1, here's what you could put on that top treble clef part. Here's what you could put on that B flat part. Really, it's up to you. The flexible options is what's printed on the score by transposition. But then the cool thing is on the left side, you have a part 1, part 2, and blank space for you to write the names of the people that you've assigned these parts to. And the way that it's designed, when you're in print and in person, you could tape that to the score, turn the pages. Those part assignments will be right there on the left-hand side for you to see as you flip through the score. So it would look something like this. I think that's pretty exciting. It's pretty innovative, and it's, again, a way to try to help. I do want to point out, as I'm going to wrap up my little session here, the string parts. We have a specific string flex part where we just have any 5 string instruments. And this is in addition to, this is not a separate product. We have these products here. You buy the regular product, and these will eventually be in SmartMusic as well. When you buy the product, you go to alfred.com/supplemental, you put in the product code, and then you have all of these as free PDF downloads. So if you have 5 violins and you want to play Dizzy Digits by Richard Meyer, you can have a 5 violin part of this. You have 5 cellos, you want to feature them in a concert, here you go, you have a cello. We've got a mixture that strengths and weaknesses within your orchestra, there you go. So this is specific string flexible instrumentation for you guys. That is the overview of the string products that were the flex products that we have available from Alfred Bellman. And I'm here, and this is the other thing. I can't be in all of your band and orchestra rooms, but I am here for you. So as you move forward in your teaching, if you ever want to get in touch with me, have specific questions, or if there's a way that I personally can help you, please feel free to get in touch with me. My email address is cbernotas@alfred.com. For more information about the Flex series, you can go to alfred.com/flex. You can also go to alfred.com/stringflex to go see those in particular. I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand this back over to Glenn, who is going to be working with you through SmartMusic to see how you can get the most use out of these and the best uses. Again, anything that I can do to help, throw some questions in the Q&A. I'll be here riding along with you, and I'm going to be glad to help along as we go. Glenn, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And I just want to thank Chris for all the work he's done. None of us expected this year to be as it has been. And so I know lots of us have had to look for repertoire that we maybe had never thought about planning to use. I know for my own self at the college level, I've had to rethink every concert that I would have had because we just haven't had any live concerts. But I also want to tell you that I have 2 sons who are both in instrumental music, one at a large high school on the west side of Minneapolis, and another one in the center of Minnesota teaching 7 through 12. We have talked just about every week about what we're doing and what we're using and where we're finding resources. So I have been incredibly blessed to have them as resources. What Michaela did not tell you either about myself is I spent the better part of 26 years teaching 5 through 12 instrumental music in a small town in Minnesota before moving here to Loris. So I thought I would go ahead and talk with you about SmartMusic and what we do with SmartMusic on Flex Titles. So I'm hoping that you are all SmartMusic users, or at least familiar with SmartMusic, so that as I do this, you're not totally lost. But this is my home screen. And when we talk about the Flex Titles, one of the best ways to search is just to go ahead and put in Flex right here in the search engine, and go ahead and do that. And you will see that we've got 73 available titles. Okay, and then each of these tabs, the instrument, composer, and publisher, you can alphabetize. So if I go to publisher, okay, and actually I'm going to hit that twice, there's some here by the Alfred that we've been talking about. Okay, and it's, if I just keep going down there, you'll notice that each one of those has the Flex or Flex Ensemble by the title. Okay, so that's one of the ways that we can find that. Because Chris joined us, I also want to show you that if I put in Mr. Bernotas' last name here, it's going to bring up everything that Chris has on SmartMusic, which is quite a few titles. And there's the Holiday Rock that I don't know if you noticed that the first time. There's the Flex Ensemble. And if I go to the second page of the results, here's Ride Through the Valley. And I'm going to go ahead and start with that one. Again, if you're familiar with SmartMusic, you know that you click on that title, and then you would get all of this information down. Okay? You'll see the different parts. So for this one, it's not just band, it's also going to include violin, viola, cello, and bass parts, a piano part, plus all of our other parts. So I'm going to go ahead and click Open. I'm going to select an instrument. Now, you'll see that these instruments, okay, so what you don't see is things like flute or clarinet. Okay, even though you saw B-flat, tenor, sax, as you go here, here's where you would see all of your C instruments. And then under parts, okay, I would have 5 different parts. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the part 1 C instruments and go ahead and open that. I will tell you that as I've been using some Flex literature this fall, one of the things I've been doing is mixing up my ensemble. I should have about 50 students in my wind ensemble. The room I use, because of the COVID restrictions, I am limited to 18 or so. And thus I actually broke my ensemble into 3 different groups. But after a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks of that, my students came and said that they just got a little bit, they wanted more variety. So I started to switch up the groups. And one week I actually just had bass and percussion come during one of the periods, and the woodwinds come another time. I had my seniors come to one rehearsal. I had my sophomores come. So just different ways of doing that. But also we found that they didn't always want to play the same part. So I was really excited when I found that some of these might have 3 C parts. Okay? So aside from having it when you first open that up, see right here in the middle of the screen is my part 1 C instrument. I could also toggle to part 2, my C instruments, okay, and any of the other instruments. Okay, so essentially you could have 5 C parts and almost do this piece as a flute quintet. Again, one of the things that Chris was talking about is truly the flexible instrumentation that you can use. And not just because you only have that many students, but because oftentimes just to keep kids interested and enthused and inspired during this very strange time period, we can give them more than one part. And in fact, I love giving my students 2 or 3 of the parts to prepare. That way, if the balance isn't quite what I wanted, I can have them play a different part. I know my lead clarinet player, I think she had all 5 parts for a couple of pieces that we did, and I'd ask her at different times to play different parts. Okay. So I just want to play a little bit of this one for you, okay? And then I'll talk a little bit more about using this with your students. Okay, I'll go ahead and pause it right there. And for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with SmartMusic, you will see an awful lot of buttons and menus that you can select. And I'm just going to walk through those a little bit, and then I will get to this assignment tab as well, because I think that's one of the real key features of SmartMusic and of this very strange time that we find ourselves in. So up here on the top, the accompaniment is exactly that. You hear the whole band. Here in the middle, it says my part. And just by clicking on that speaker icon, I can now turn on my part. Okay, metronome I have on. I could also put on the subdivisions of the beat. Okay, and maybe here, maybe the first few times I'm playing through it, boy, that's an awfully quick tempo. So maybe I just want to slow it down quite a bit. So I can just type in a new tempo, or I can use the plus and minus keys. I can always reset that if I want to there. Okay. I also don't have to start at the beginning. Once I move my arrow, okay, I can click on any measure or half measure, and I can start wherever I want that to start. So let me give you an example of that. I'll go ahead and start here at measure 7. I'm just going to have my part on and turn off the accompaniment. I slowed it down a little bit, so here we are. Okay, so that gives you an example of the different kinds of things you can do with that. Also, I know that one of the questions I always get when we're talking about SmartMusic is the cursor. Okay, if you don't like the cursor, go up to display. You'll see that right now it's set for the beat cursor. I could have it as a flow cursor, a note cursor, or I can turn that cursor off altogether. And again, that's totally up to you, a way to use it. You'll also see that this measure is highlighted. I want to get rid of the highlighting the measure. It is gone as well. Okay, so let's talk more about making an assignment with SmartMusic, and especially with these flex tunes. So I'm going to click on the assign button. Takes me into a little bit different window. Okay, but it gives me my title, and then select an ensemble type. Okay, I'm going to select a custom assignment, Then, what do I want my students to see? I want to allow the metronome, the accompaniment. Maybe I want to allow my part so they can hear that. Cursor type I can leave as any so that they can do it. Okay, and measure highlight. Everything that I had on that previous screen, I'm now able to work with here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click my blue arrow. Now you'll notice that up here I've got same setup for all parts or a custom setup. If I wanted to just send some of the music, see right now it's all highlighted, so it's the whole thing. If I want to do a custom setup, okay, I can choose a location, okay, and instead of doing the whole thing, I could just go maybe from bar 1 to bar 12. Okay, and you'll see how that highlights it. You also have these rings here. So if I wanted to continue that out, I could take it to there. And now I've customized my assignment for different players. Okay, so I'm going to again click the blue button. Here's my rubric for grading this. The assessment rubric is the score that SmartMusic gives your students. Okay, so I might leave that at 100 points so I get their exact score. I always like to hear their tone quality and give them a score. So maybe I'll give that another 50 points. And recording, sometimes I grade on the recording, but oftentimes I don't. And so, whoops, I realized I put in just 5, so there's the 50. So let's leave it at that and go to next. So it's now saving my assignment template. And yes, I'm going to assign it now. So I'm going to select an ensemble. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose my own jazz ensemble. Okay, I'm not really going to send it to them. I think they might panic a little bit on that. One of the things that I want to do is that I don't want to assign that part to everybody. So if I choose assign to some students, now I can go through my students and say, okay, which ones of those students are playing the first C part? And so I'm able to make that assignment just to those people. Okay? And I know that that's a real quick way to look at those assignments. When I'm using the flex parts, I'm not going to send the flute part to all the flutes if I have my flutes playing different parts. So it's such a nice feature that we have there that allows us to work with all these different flex parts that we have. Okay, so I'm going to go back here to my Find Music and just go through and show you that aside from the pieces that are there, okay, that we have for Chris, one of the things that I want to show you is that one of the new features of SmartMusic and with some of the flex titles is this printable titles. So I'm going to go back and search by flex instead, and now filter that by searchable or printable titles. Okay, and now you'll see that there are some of those other titles that Chris was talking about. So if we go to Randall Standridge's Alarm, okay, there's one of the pieces that we were talking about. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and open that again. Okay, and notice it went to baritone, but I have all the parts. So let's go to part 1 baritone and let's open that part up. Okay, and please know that even though it just had baritone on that drop-down menu, when you're in here, you do have all of these other parts, okay? So if you needed the C part, or the flute part, the oboe parts, those are all here in this drop-down menu. You'll see it's got part 1, 2, and 3 of this for every instrument. Okay, so such a great way to be able to find your way around here. Okay, now you'll notice one of the things that was not there before was the word print. So clicking on that, you'll see it gives you the SmartMusic display or the custom display. I've really grown to like this custom display where it's creating the PDF, which now comes over here for me. Okay, and now I'm ready to print out that music for my ensemble. Okay, so this one, trombone, baritone, bassoon, cello, if you have a cello player, and all of a sudden, you know, you're ready to go on these. So some of these flex parts, as well as having the different instruments, are printable titles for you as well. Okay, and I know that that becomes a big deal, especially when I think some of the things that we're facing are some budget considerations. Now, you cannot print the score. All the parts are here when we've got the printable title feature. Okay, so I'll go back there. And again, these are all the printable titles that I had there. And it's not just band orchestra pieces, but there are other, like the trumpet method, these individual warm-ups that Chris has done for every instrument. So let's take a look at one of those. Okay, and again, just an easy way, just go to those open ones, hit the open again, and it starts out very easy with some long tones. And then here in the middle, the drop-down menu is where we get all of the different exercises that are on this page. Again, those are printable titles. Okay, so let me go back home and let me go back, and I will really so simple just to type in the word flex when you do some of these. I can tell you a little bit more about some of these. Some of these you might recognize. These that say Brassworks, those are a lot of the Canadian brass book beginning quintets. Okay, but when I do that, okay, so there shows you that it's the Canadian brass. Okay, but it's not just for brass anymore. So that if you have those books and you were used to using those with your brass quintets, you can also, okay, bring these in. And notice now it says part 4 and part 5 are available for bassoon. So if I go ahead and open that one, you'll see that it's going to come up with the part 4 right away, okay, because that's the one I chose. Also here in the middle, I could get all of my other parts. So, okay, part 1 is just for flute and oboe, part 4 and 5 for bassoon, part 1, 2, and 3 for clarinet. So if you've got that Canadian brass beginning quintet, the score, you can see how it's trumpet 1, trumpet 2, horn, trombone, and tuba. But through here, you also see all the different instruments that have been assigned those parts at all. So I think it's just one of the great things that SmartMusic has done for us is taken some of that smaller ensemble music and given us parts for the entire ensemble. Another feature I want to show you that helps us with the flex, okay, is on my screen down here at the bottom is the category of small ensemble. And again, this is where many of those Canadian brass things will come up, but so will some of the other flex ensemble things come up. Okay, so many different ways of finding the same literature and doing the same things with it. So let's go ahead and open this one so I can show you some of that. Again, this is a Canadian brass piece. So let's open that, and let's go ahead and get the flute part for now and open that up. Let's play a little bit of that. I don't know if you remember when I played that C part before, it was the piano playing. Many of these have the instrumental sound as you play that. And if you're not familiar with SmartMusic, anytime I move my arrow over a note, it gives me two icons, a speaker icon, which will play the sound for me, and the fingering icon, which will show me the fingering for that particular note. Okay, so if you've never seen that before, that is a fantastic feature that is embedded into SmartMusic. All right, let's go back home once again. Okay. What I'm trying to really impress upon you is that SmartMusic has become very, very user-friendly. Okay, and because we all find ourselves in this very well, it's just uncertain times, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen with the rest of this semester or second semester, that there are options out there for us. And I think that being able to find the music by using the search function, okay, and being able to assign those to so many different students by what part they're playing gives you an awful lot of that wonderful flexibility that we've been looking at. Just quickly, some other things about SmartMusic. Okay? All of the tabs that you see here, okay? I noticed that we had some choir directors in our audience today too. There is a when I click on that choir tab, you'll notice that there are 274 different titles now that are choral pieces. And so if you've never seen that before, I encourage you to take a look at this. I think choirs, it's got the band's beat a little bit in that it's always been kind of a flex ensemble. There are different things already made for us as choir directors, whether it's SSA or TTBB or SAB or two-part, and you'll see so many of these choral titles. Okay, you've got all kinds of different settings of these things. So if you're looking for a setting of Amazing Grace, we've got a two-part, a three-part, a four-part, and a different three-part. So those of you that might be choir directors who are with us today, I'll go ahead and open one of those so you can see what that looks like. Very similar to opening up any of the titles, except for select an instrument, of course, you're selecting a voice part, and then we're just going to open that up. Notice it's got the piano cues and that it has the music for us.
The world is calling and I'm listening, and I'm listening. I feel the freedom inside. Come on, let's go for a ride.
Okay, so some great vocal parts that are on there as well. And I didn't even notice that I didn't click on Amazing Grace. I apologize for that. Okay. But I think that for our vocal colleagues out there, we have really done some nice things about getting lots of vocal literature into the program and ready for you to use as well. So I hope that you feel that that you are included in that. Okay. You can also go to Printable Titles here, and you notice now there are 76 of the printable titles for choral as well. So please know that we've included you in that as well. So why don't I get one of those up here for you just to show you how that is working as well. And again, takes just a second each time to open our parts, and we are ready right there, and click it on print. Okay, and I still go with that custom display, and then as quick as that, I've got the part ready to go. Now, it doesn't look like the normal kind of choral pieces that would have the accompaniment part as well. Okay, but it is right there for you. So just a wonderful feature again that we've got within SmartMusic. Okay, and then finally, just some other information. One of the things that's happened to me in this very strange year is that I have been called upon to find creative ways to have concerts. And so one of the things that my youngest son has discovered for me, if you've never heard of the Upbeat Music app, it is just a wonderful program that you literally can set some parameters, add a click track, and your students can play wherever they are, at home, in a practice room, wherever. Takes pretty good video quality and audio quality, and you can, well, it uploads them automatically for you. I will say that I see that Michaela has sent out a link for you, and what I'm going to do here is, and Michaela, I'm hoping that maybe you can make sure that this is going to that and send me a quick message. This is that Upbeat Music app that I'm talking about. And so I'll go back and share my screen here. So this is where I'm at. And when I go over here to these three lines and go to Upbeat Form, okay, these are things that I have set up just in the last few weeks and have asked my students to do. Okay, so here are, this piece, El Toro, is a piece that Chris has composed. I'm doing that with a youth wind ensemble. Achieved as Thy Glorious Work is not just a brass ensemble, but a trombone quartet. I'm doing some of my own duets. I've got a jazz piece. Julie Garou, A Time to Dance, is one of the pieces that's also been done as a flex piece for us. But I'll just go here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Here's what the video looks like. Okay, so it was real easy. This is one that, this is my youngest son. He and I did this, and I don't know how well you'll be able to hear it, but I'll play it for you here. Okay, so that's the Upbeat Music app, and I think pairing that with SmartMusic, because I can actually use the SmartMusic accompaniment track as a backing track into a program like this. So it kind of all makes sense as a, this kind of full circle approach to what we've been called to do. So whether it's the flex ensembles or our regular ensembles that are in smaller groups, or duets and quartets, because I think what we all really have to be this year is flexible. And so I'm just so grateful to Make Music and to SmartMusic, to Alfred for working together with these great composers, our great friends and colleagues in the music industry that have come to our assistance, because it's just been all of us working together. And I know that I have shared all of your frustrations this fall, but also we're there with you, and the people at Make Music and Alfred are there saying, how can we help? So, our site is updated on such a regular basis with new tunes. I know 3 weeks ago, we didn't have any flex music, and all of a sudden I got the same email that I'm sure many of you got that said, hey, there are now 21 or 22 flex ensemble pieces on SmartMusic. And so I think that they are excited to be helping us. We're excited to be helping you, and we're excited that you joined us today. So at that point, I think I'll turn it back to Michaela. So I think she's got some announcements and maybe some questions, a kind of a Q&A session that we can go to. So Michaela, it's all yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Glenn and Chris. We're going to hop over to the Q&A section here. But before I do that, I'm going to throw a couple of links into the chat for you guys. Now let's go over to the questions. I have a few that popped up, and actually a few about that Upbeat app too. So Chris and Glenn, I'm going to have you both pop back on here so we can see you. There you are. And so the first question, and I suggest all of you guys go into that Q&A box and look on the answered section. Chris has been answering some of our questions throughout the session. So thank you, Chris, for that. And I think, let's see, the first couple questions, Chris kind of answered already. So I'll go to the next one, specifically talking about conducting. Is it hard? Let's see, is it hard conducting a flex ensemble? I think that's specifically what the question is asking.
Well, I think the challenge, the question I think would be in the usage of flex. And yeah, it's definitely hard to use flex titles in that when you look at the score, it's so foreign, and this is the first thing that I was approached with when designing this series was, okay, there's a thing I call theory and the thing you call practice, the things that should work, and then the things when you actually start to put them into action. And the first theory was we should do a flex series. The second theory was how we're going to put it together. Then you have you put the charge out. Here we go. I'm going to have this piece written in a flex format. Then you go to do it. And the first thing I did was put it up on my screen in Finale. And okay, let me try this. As a writer, I was overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, these 5 parts. How do I even think? I'm just going to do 5 measures or 8 measures and just do a phrase. It's overwhelming. It's an unfamiliar thing for us to look at. So it is hard. And I think that's probably what gives a lot of teachers some apprehension and the confusion on what to do. We're used to looking at, the score order. These aren't in our normal score order. You have to actually study it and practice it, and you have to kind of rewire your brain. That's where the way that we were thought of was this teacher map. Let's give a teacher map that can show part 1, and at least as you get familiar with the piece, you don't also, if you're doing 5 of these pieces, you might not have the same students playing part 1 on all 5 of the pieces. So you can, you might forget some of that. So putting it that way, I think was part of that. If it's
Chris,
okay,
if I can add to that quickly, one of the things that I had to get used to was exactly that. And one of my solutions, and actually my students loved it because they got to sit next to students they never got to sit next to, was when I had my oboe, a couple flutes, a couple clarinets, and a trumpet on part one. I put all of them in the same area. So I had to rethink my seating chart, that's for sure, because it wasn't flutes in the front row and tubas back in the back row. It was all over the place, and that was actually one of the things my students enjoyed the most, was sitting next to others. Now, my ears had to do a double take a few times. Because, okay, part one is over here, part two, I'm going to try to keep part three in the center of the ensemble. So I kind of made a star shape in my space. But it is, it's fascinating how well kids adapt to this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that teachers, a flex product is geared towards students, but actually you got to think about how flexible teachers are too, right? I mean, we adapt to things all the time. Left field, you don't know, you might be practicing in a hallway or a gym or outside or with your whole group or part of your group. We're flexible all the time. I think about, like, if I go to if I'm guest conducting somewhere and they ask me if I have a seating chart that I like, it kind of doesn't matter. When I get there, do what you're normally going to do. When I get there, I will adapt to you. So it's kind of like getting our ears different from the teaching side of the stand and getting used to that way, but we have to be organized. And I think that's kind of the challenge of that. I do want to actually go back to two things that were brought up. One, you had mentioned about assigning flute players, like all the different parts. When we were writing these, it was a lot of back and forth between me and the original writers of the pieces, because it's a very much of a collaborative effort. Our editorial process and our work is not just, I don't just sit here with a red pen and like circle right things, wrong things. And we actually talk about things like, how would this work for a student? How does this work for a director? How does this work musically? And one of those things that came back in those conversations was, when I play these back with 5 flutes, it sounds really cool. Or if you put this, like the saxophone parts, just the altos, like this would work really great with just 5 altos. The writers kind of like lights went on in their brains of like, wow, they rethought some of this stuff and it works that way. So that's one thing. Absolutely use these as a highlight for students, and for those students that are more advanced and you want to give them extra challenges, you can differentiate, which is another question. How do I use this kind of stuff for an audition? My answer to that is you can differentiate. Give the students that need more of a challenge, give them more challenging stuff or different parts, multiple parts. Kids that are less experienced, give them parts that are more applicable to them and meeting them where they are at their own ability level. So it's however you want to use them for auditions or any other way is a great way to do that. So those were the couple things I definitely wanted to go back to.
Awesome. I think those were 2 really helpful answers. Thank you for taking the time for that. I have a couple of questions for the Upbeat app specifically that you talked about, Glenn.
Okay.
So first of all, Dr. Adolf Wright was asking about what is the latency with the Upbeat app, and then I think someone asked, was it in real time or did they record it on their own? And I think this application, they're recording it completely on their own and uploading different videos, and this is just an editing tool. Is that correct?
Correct. You're definitely recording it on your own, and before you submit it, a graph will come up, and you can literally click anywhere in the graph, hear the first 4 clicks of your tempo, and slide your graph to line up with the first main beat. And while that might sound kind of complicated, I have to tell you that I could not use Audacity very well when I was trying last spring to do some online virtual performance. So I found that this one I mastered in about 15 minutes, which is remarkably user-friendly. So what I do is I will copy the URL once I create a project. And there's even a button that says copy URL. Okay, I will send that to my students. When they click on that link, a picture of a headphone really comes up, because you have to wear a headphone when you play your part. Then once you've played it, okay, the video and the audio are all uploaded. The latency issues, I've not had a lot of issues with that. I'm sure you're all used to trying to do things on Zoom. And if two people play at the same time, you know, that can just be an absolute train wreck. And I find that I'm happy with this. I'm happy with the sound quality I get. I've got an ensemble, that Time to Dance that I showed you of Julie Garou's. I should have 45 parts done. It's their final exam, if you will. And so by next Tuesday, before I turn in grades, I'm hoping to have all 45 parts. And we'll see how that turns out. It will be a challenge, I know that. And the one thing I wanted to remind you of that Michaela reminded me of, when you use this, if you use this app, you can send it to your students, the MP4, but if you were to post that on YouTube or something like that, you would want to get permission from your publisher. And I think Michaela is going to add a link where you can do that for Alfred. So it is one thing that I hadn't thought a whole lot about, but I haven't really published things publicly. Most of the time, I'll just send some of these to my students.
And I think that's a really cool tool so they can see their progress. I know it's so hard with the latency issues on Zoom, it's hard, they can't hear themselves performing together. So this is a really cool, easy to use tool that if you are only going to send it to your students, I don't think you would have to request that. Again, maybe check with your administrator, whoever does the research for your copyright, to triple check that. But it is a really cool tool to say, like, this is what you guys did together. And so thank you for sharing that, Glenn. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Eric says, is it possible to import SmartMusic to Finale to further customize the piece to meet our need?
I don't think so. No, you can't go that way. You can use Finale to create your own content, or you can use the Compose tool within SmartMusic to create and put that in. But going the other way would be changing the arrangements and changing the pieces, and that gets into the gray area of the copyright permissions and all of that. So I would use Finale to create public domain arrangements and export it as a SmartMusic file and import it into that to use it. It's more native because they work well together. Or use the Compose tool within, but you can't export from SmartMusic and go from there.
Correct.
Awesome. That is super clear. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Well, it looks like that is everything we have time for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Glenn and Chris, for providing us with so much helpful information for Flex today. These are amazing resources. I hope you have a wonderful time utilizing all of that. In the meantime, thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.